excited to get started tonight with our webinar series with leaders, for leaders. And the intent of these is to expose our students and other leaders to some wisdom, some insights, things that they want to share. And all of our invited guests have books, podcasts, have done work in the field, very practical work in the field that I think our aspiring students and aspiring administrators will appreciate and value. Dan Butler, our first speaker, kicking off our webinar series tonight, Permission to Be Great, a book that I actually hand out myself at some of my conferences and workshops because I love it and I love the title, Permission to Be Great, even though we probably don't need that permission. Your book certainly does that, and a lot of what I appreciated most about it was the practical advice for principals and superintendents. So I just put that out there right away. I work closely with Dan, respect what he's doing at Western Dubuque. And Dan, please give us a little introduction as well before we dig into your wisdom tonight. But I think we're in for a treat, and I appreciate you being on to kick off our webinar series tonight, Dan. It's all yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Grundmeyer. I'm grateful to be here. Hello, everyone that is live with us and that will be watching this recording. My name is Dr. Dan Butler, the Superintendent of Schools in Western Dubuque Community School District in Northeast Iowa. Been in this role for 3 years, and prior to that, I was a principal human resource facilitator, teacher coach, school administration manager. I've worked just about every job at Western Dubuque, and I've been there for 22 years now. And as I said, third as superintendent. I absolutely love what I do, and hopefully we can talk through some practical, what I hope are timeless truths of leadership here this afternoon, evening, and you can walk away with some things to think about, walk away with a few more resources to build your leadership toolbox, if you will. So thanks again for having me. I'm going to share my screen and bring up this. As Dr. Grundmeyer had said, about four years ago, I happened to write a book called Permission to Be Great. And the subtitle of that is Increasing Engagement in Your School. And really, what I looked at was, what is engaging educators, or what is burning them out, frankly? And the way that I view burnout and engagement, I believe they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. Burnout is very bad. I'm tired. I'm emotionally exhausted. I maybe dehumanized people, and I just am losing my sense of accomplishment. But on the other end of that spectrum is engagement. And the more that I reduce my burnout, the more that I'm increasing my engagement. And we know the more engaged we are in our work, the better the outcomes we will be delivering to students, which is ultimately the bottom line. I don't care if you're a paraeducator, if you are a teacher, if you are an administrator, if you are a food service employee, if you're a bus driver. If you are fired up about your work and feeling purpose and deep meaning in what you do, you are going to be delivering better outcomes to students. And again, that is our bottom line. So one concept that I talk about within Permission to Be Great is this concept of ERA. And some of you have played baseball or whatever, and ERA is a pitching statistic, and the lower the ERA in a baseball pitcher, the better. It's exactly the opposite in this model that I'm talking about. We want to have as much ERA as we can. And what I mean by that is encouragement, recognition, and appreciation. We can never have enough of that. Encouraging the noble work that our teachers and staff are doing, recognizing what their accomplishments are, the noble work that they're doing, and appreciating, taking time to have more ERA. That is a concept that I talk about, and specific strategies within that book to build ERA. It's not rocket science, but again, in this introduction, I talked about timeless truths, okay, and what we can do that will be a practice, an effective best practice in 2025 or even 2055. All right. That's what I'm seeking, is things that have staying power. In the book, I also talk about Mrs. Lammers. In a brief interaction that I had with her, Mrs. Lammers was my all-time favorite teacher ever. She's my 4th grade teacher. And for those of you watching, I really struggled to read as a student and really started figuring things out a little bit in 4th grade. I had really kind of poor experiences up until 4th grade when I had Mrs. Lammers. But a long story short, I loved her. But on the last day of school, we were walking out, and I was just about ready to walk through the doors for 3 months of freedom. And I didn't have great relationships with teachers prior to Mrs. Lammers, but when I was leaving, before I did, she stopped me and she said, Dan Butler. And she turned my shoulders around and she looked at me dead in the eyes with her big brown eyes. And she was about 60 years old at the time, close to the end of her career. And she said, Dan Butler, you have my full permission to be great. And I didn't really think much of it, 35 years ago when I was 10 years old. However, as I come back to that, sometimes that's all we need is that belief that someone that truly believes in us and gives us that permission. Hey, you can be great. So came up with a great title of a book. That's the opening story within the book. If you like that, you should buy the book. Hey, buy a whole bunch of copies. My kids got to go to college. All right. So a little humor for you. But another concept that I talk about and that is near and dear to my heart is this concept that leadership is for everyone, not just administrators, not just principals, not just superintendents, not just central office people. Leadership lives within everyone. Teachers, coaches, paraeducators, food service employees, bus drivers, any type of person that is dealing with people. A leader is anyone who influences others and positively influences them and motivates them to be better. By that definition, we all have influence. We have the ability to influence for good or for bad. Whether you like it or not, you are influencing, therefore you are a leader. All right. I believe that deep in my heart, and through Permission to Be Great, you will hear that concept often. As I write that book, I am not speaking to just simply leaders or principals or superintendents. I'm speaking to every educator. We are all leaders. With that, that is the first segment that I have. Does anyone have questions that they want to drop in the chat or that they would like to ask live? I'd like to allow a couple of minutes before we move on to the next segment.
I'm watching the chat here for you as well, Dan. And
Okay.
if you don't have a question, I might ask one here.
That'd be great.
And, when you talk about every Permission to Be Great, I love that story. It's a good reminder of the book. But how do you empower folks in your own district? I mean, you've moved up the ranks internally for lots of different reasons, but how do you empower and continue to leverage your own strengths of your people to be great as well?
One of the things that I think about is, and I talk about this in the book too, is when you see something, say something. And we use that language a lot when we're talking about bullying and harassment and initiatives. When you see something, say something. But I think in terms of feedback, if you're doing something right, we want to tell you. We want to encourage, recognize, appreciate that when you're doing something right, because ultimately, the purpose of praise is you want people to repeat that behavior again. You want them to exhibit that behavior that you're recognizing, that you're praising. Now, conversely, if something is not going well, people need that constructive feedback as well of like, hey, we need to take a look at this and let's look for ways where we can continue to learn, grow, and get better. So from my role, that is what I do, how I lead my principals, how I lead the people that are within my charge directly within our central office team. But then ultimately, it is my hope, it is my expectation, Trent, that cascades down to everyone within the organization. When you see something good and when you see something not so good, that we're saying something about that. Positive, constructive feedback, and also that praise to reinforce those positive behaviors that we want to see repeated.
Yeah, accountability. I hear you say loud and clear for everybody, both positive and with concerns. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so let's go down to the second thing. And Dr. Grundmeyer asked me to provide some advice to graduate students to get the most preparation from their program. And here's what I would say. I've been in several master's programs, principal program, a superintendent program, and a doctoral program. I've been in school a long time. But what I have learned from all of these experiences, get a network, establish a network, and collaborate. There are people that I was in the principal prep program with years ago. We're talking 15, close to 20 years ago, that I still am in close contact on a regular basis. Maybe they're still in principal roles. Maybe they've moved up to the central office ranks or a superintendent, but I have a close network with them and a close relationship with them that I can collaborate. And I am going to tell you, this work that we do, it is way too big to take on alone, okay? Whether you're a building leader, whether you're a district office leader, whether you're a superintendent, it doesn't matter. If you're in the educational field, this work is too big and it's hard. It's hard every day. It's hard even when it's good. So establishing that network, reaching out to one another and collaborating, that is a huge piece of advice. And I do that on a daily basis. On average, I would estimate that I talk to probably 3 or 4 superintendents per day about different things that we are experiencing. And along with that concept, the smartest person in the room is the room. Okay. It's that collaborative concept that together we achieve more. 4 minds can get more done than 1 mind. All right. And just keeping that mantra in your mind is very important and critical. The smartest person in the room is, in fact, that room. Collectively, we are better. Okay. I'll again take a brief pause. Are there questions? Is there clarity? Would you like me to go further with any of those bullets in the basic advice that I would provide to you in terms of getting the most out of your preparation program?
When you say expanding the network, Dan, just so you know, where we actually challenge our students to have influencer assignments where they're posting and influencing a larger audience and making some connections. And we don't force a particular platform. We just try to challenge students to influence and take learning from the program to their mentors in the field. What other opportunities? I mentioned the internship, class assignments. Can you talk at all about other opportunities that they could strategically leverage to expand their networks?
Yes, I mean, definitely digital platforms are helpful, whatever one that is. That's X, Twitter, Facebook groups, potentially Instagram, LinkedIn. All of those are fine, and like the tool doesn't matter. It's about that relationship that can be established, and it's a vehicle to enhance those face-to-face connections that you have. So digital connections are great. Being involved in the program and engaging with your colleagues that are in your cohort, that's important too. But then branching out to conferences, professional learning opportunities outside of your school district, whether that's offered through the School Administrators of Iowa, possibly the Iowa Association of School Boards. There's all kinds of organizations, but you can establish networks and groups there as well. And I would push people to challenge and go to those opportunities and present some of the content that you are passionate about, where you can learn and grow your network. I love to professionally speak, and I've grown my network significantly from those opportunities. Really, it's how I've got in touch with Dr. Grundmeyer, and we've probably known each other in this capacity probably for about a decade because of that professional networking, which we would now probably consider each other friends from that. And lots of digital communications and conference communications together, but all that does is then enhances that face-to-face opportunity when we have the opportunity to be in each other's presence. So all of those things are excellent opportunities to grow that network.
Great examples. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have some things that I would talk about that I think are insights to landing an administrative job. What I would tell anyone who's asking is do your research. Know the building. If you're applying for a principal position or you're applying for a superintendent or district office position, then know the district. There is no excuse in 2025 to going into an interview of not knowing about the context that you're coming into. districts and buildings have websites, they have social media channels, their information is out there. They're looking to brand their school in a certain way. By doing your research, you can understand and you can have a decent idea of what the culture is like there, okay? What they value, what's important to that place, and really having a good understanding. Not coming in as a know-it-all, but understanding you've got a pretty strong background of having an idea of what they stand for, what they believe in, what they hold deep in their hearts. Now, the second part of that would be to understand how the skills that you have or the skills that you're continuing to develop, how will those skills allow this building or this district to move to higher levels? Because that's what you want to do. You want to find a great fit, but also you want to be able to take what you know and your skills and push that building, that district to a higher level and speak directly how you would aim to do that. But that comes from doing your research and truly knowing yourself. And you'll hear me say often, if you hear me speak long enough, the best type of leader is one that is self-aware. You need to know what your skills are and where your strengths lie. Now, the second part of this, the second insight would be search for the proper fit. Dr. Grundmeyer runs a consulting firm and founded a consulting firm, and he talks about job fit a lot. And that's what his firm does, is seeks the proper fit for that because it matters. Anyone can find a job. If you want to find a principal job, you want to find a superintendent job, you want to find a leadership job, anyone can find a job. What you want to find is you want to seek fulfillment, because it goes back to what I said previously. The work is hard. Yeah, it's hard even when it's good. That doesn't mean that it can't be fulfilling at the same time. And that's what you want. You want to seek that proper fit where your skills are appreciated, they're recognized, they're valued, they're encouraged, and it's leading the building, the district, the position, the context to higher heights. That's what you want to seek. But that comes from doing your research on yourself and doing your research on the place where you're looking to find that administrative gig. Okay? Now, one more piece. When it comes to interviewing, not that this is a formula scientifically proven, but when people ask me about answering interview questions and how I go about that, I have a formula that I kind of follow that I like to see within candidates and that, frankly, I use myself. When questions are asked, I like to say three things within my response, or I like to hear three things. I like to hear about the philosophy of the person or whatever the question is, my philosophy on the topic. Along with that, a thinking process or a process that I've used within the question that's being asked, and then describing an experience related to that. So philosophy, process, example. If I can hit those when answering an interview question, I'm being very clear and I'm coming across as competent and concise and knowing what I stand for and ultimately being convincing, believable, because that's what we would want within that interview. Philosophy, process, example. What questions could I entertain from the insights to landing the first administrative job?
As I work on my wait time here, Dan, the number one question I tend to get from people, especially aspiring, getting that first job, is how do I combat, or what can I do to represent myself with candidates that may have more experience than me? What would your response and advice be to folks that maybe ask you that question?
That's a great question because it's a personal question to me. 3 years ago, I had zero experience on paper as a superintendent. And I would often say, listen, I do not carry the title of superintendent, but let me tell you and let me speak to the skills and the experiences that I've gained that will allow me to be successful within this position. You're right. Acknowledging from the get-go, I don't have the title of principal. However, I do have X experiences and X amount of work that I've done and skills that I possess and skills that I'm continuing to develop that will allow me to be successful in this position. And if you can speak to the things on the job description or the posting and things like that, and getting really specific about how your skills and the experiences that you've gained over the years fit that, then that's even better. I don't have the title. I do have the experiences.
Thank you. I love that.
Anyone else? Okay. So the next one was the best practices that you've seen the best principals portray. And there's two books that I want to cite here, two resources. The first book is by one of my educational heroes, and actually turned in from a network, a good friend, is Todd Whitaker. And the book is What Great Principals Do Differently. And he outlines 7 different behaviors that the best principals employ based on research that he conducted. And the best do this differently than everyone else. And within What Great Principals Do Differently, I want to highlight 2 of them. And the first one is this belief that it's about people. It's not about programs. And what's meant by that is we are in a relationship business. We are in a people business. Curricula, assessment, instructional practices, leadership models, things are going to come, initiatives, they're going to come and they're going to go, all right? Some will be recycled and so forth. But at the end of the day, our work, whether you're a superintendent, central office leader, you're a principal, you're a teacher, our work is about people. And our work is about developing people. And that is a central belief within our school district. In fact, it's one of our core beliefs. People first is a core belief that exists within our school district. We say, I'm looking at the definition, we prioritize all people. Staff, students, families, and community members are the driving force behind our success. In Western Dubuque schools, we believe that deep in our hearts, and that is true to my core as well. The programs, the initiatives, all of that, they're going to come and go. They will. But at the end of the day, our work is about people and establishing really sound, strong relationships. That doesn't mean that it's rainbows and butterflies and happy things all the time. It means that we are working together collectively, continually developing one another, continually growing the capacity of one another to take on this work. The second principle from this book that I'd like to point out is great principals, great leaders, they've got high expectations for others, but they have even higher expectations of themselves. And they're not going to hold someone accountable to a standard that they're not willing to take on themselves. All right. They're going to be very hard on themselves and hold themselves to a very high level of expectation. In turn, they're going to model the way for other people. All right. They're going to set a very high bar for themselves, and the people that serve under them are going to rise to that occasion. We can't have a lower level of expectation for ourselves than we do for other people. We got to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Okay. So that was resource number 1 of best practices, What Great Principals Do Differently by Todd Whitaker. The second resource that I would like to share is called The Leadership Challenge by James Koussis and Barry Posner. Okay. Outstanding book. This is, I believe they're on their 6th or their 7th edition. This book was published in 1987 originally. So earlier on in my introduction, I talked about timeless truths. Okay. Well, we're talking about The Leadership Challenge is 38 years old in original publication. So it's here to stay. Within this, there are certain principles that Koussis and Posner spell out, which really guide a lot of what I do. Number 1 is do what you say you will do. You want to build credibility. You want to build trust with other people. Be impeccable, as Miguel Ruiz would say. Be impeccable with your word. Do what you say you will do. okay? Make sure you are delivering on promises. I would say under promise and over deliver. You never want to over promise and under deliver. That's not a good thing. That erodes trust. And at the end of the day, our work is about trust. It's people work, but it's about trust. So do what you say you will do. Okay. The second principle is see and share exciting possibilities for the future. Really, that's about casting a compelling vision, seeing where do we want to be in the future and showing that to people, painting a very clear and eloquent, beautiful picture of where we want to be in the future. Share those exciting possibilities, cast that vision. Okay. The third is about allowing others to take initiative and experiment. All right. That's about empowering other people, building their capacity. I want to, as a superintendent, I want to work myself out of a job. What I mean by that is the people that I lead, I want to continue to develop and grow their capacity, that they can do work and continue to build their skills that I really am not going to be needed, because I want this organization to have staying power. So Western Dubuque Schools continues to be a great place, whether Dan Butler is here or not, right? So it's kind of that idea of like working myself out of a job, in a sense of like building the capacity of others and increasing their skills, developing them. Okay. Fostering collaboration and building others up. This goes along with that. Talked about the smartest person in the room is the room, but yes, this work is too big to take on alone. We need to collaborate. We need to recognize, we need to appreciate, we need to encourage others. All right. And then celebrating others by showing gratitude. Okay. Being grateful for what we have, being grateful for the people around us. It's a people business. We've got to take care of those people. Those are two great resources that I love. The Leadership Challenge by Koussis and Posner, and the What Great Principals Do Differently by Todd Whitaker. Those are must-haves in my opinion. Any questions that I could entertain related to those best practices that I outlined?
Questions, students? You got Dan on the line here. Here's your chance. And I love the reference to those two books. They're great. And by the way, they will have some reference to those throughout I can't remember all the courses, but certainly a lot of Todd's work. And I think we also reference the top desired traits in leadership. And that's Koussis and Posner research as well.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll keep moving forward. So the next topic was wisdom that you've gathered over the years in school leadership. Well, I've been a school leader for 15 years, and I've learned a lot over that time. And one thing that I've learned is that everyone owns a bit of the truth. Everyone owns a bit of the problem. So there are at least two sides to every situation. Everyone has a perspective. And I think it's very important for leaders to know this and understand that people are going to bring multiple perspectives to a situation based on their experiences, what they've had within their life, within their leadership, and so forth. It is absolutely impeccable and so important to avoid assumptions. All right. As the great Ted Lasso would say, be curious and not judgmental. Ask questions, seek clarity, and know that two people experiencing the same thing are going to have different views on that, and to be prepared for that and to expect that. Along with that, I believe two things can be true at the same time. A fancy way of saying that is duality. All right. I believe two things can be true at the same time. So one can be, I'm having an incredibly hard and stressful day based on the amount of emotional work that is coming. That's true. What also is true and can be true is that I am enjoying this work and experiencing a great deal of fulfillment and knowing that I'm making a difference. Those things can be true at the same time. All right. I can be right within a situation. There's a portion of something that I might have right. There's also a portion of that situation where I'm also wrong. Both things can be true. Let me give you another example. In Western Dubuque, and probably every district across the state of Iowa, all 325 of them, is more than likely there's a sub shortage within your school or your district. I don't know what your name is. Teacher is your label, but you nodded at me. And yeah, there's a sub shortage. Okay. I believe that to be true. I also believe that within our school district, we have a bit of a human behavior problem as well, where people are somewhat abusing the system and taking days that they don't need to take. Right? So, like, we have a staff attendance problem a little bit. That's true. But we also, not to completely ignore, we have a subbing problem. Both things are true. Both things are contributing to that issue. And we just had a conversation with this within our negotiations, and our association would agree with us. Yeah, there's some different abuse things going on with attendance and whatever else. We're contributing to the problem by being gone, but we also have a substitute shortage. Both things are true. Okay. Both things can be true. Okay. And here's some more wisdom that I've gathered. People talk a lot about culture. And the way that they would describe it is that, culture is the way you feel when you come into a building. You know it when you feel it. It's just a vibe that you have and whatever else. You know when it's good, and boy, you know when it's bad. So what I've come to understand is that culture is really three things. One, it is our collective beliefs, what we truly believe within our organization, whether that's my teaching team, whether that's my school, whether that's my district, our collective beliefs. So in Western Dubuque schools, our collective beliefs or our core values around that are people first, continual growth, and opportunities for all. That is what we believe deep in our hearts. That is going to drive our behavior. Okay. We believe that. Behavior. Okay. So culture is belief. It is also behavior. How we choose to show up and how we behave, the actions that we take, that is behavior. And then culture is also the experiences that we receive from others and the experiences that we deliver to others as well. Experiences that we receive and the experiences that we deliver. So culture is belief, it is behavior, and it is the experiences. Okay. So when we're clear with what we believe, as I said with Western Dubuque, people first. Okay. Continual growth, opportunities for all. If that's what we collectively believe, we better behave in a way that supports that. If I say that we're people first and all of a sudden we are just taking actions that go against that, well, we're going to be full of it and we will not establish any type of credibility. All right. And ultimately, when we have our beliefs and we behave coherently with those or in alignment with those beliefs, we're going to deliver better experiences to our stakeholders, our students, our staff members, our community, our families. All right. And in turn, they're going to have a better experience, and so are we as educators. So when I think about culture, that's what culture is to me. It is belief, behavior, and experiences. That is the end of that segment that I had, and I would love to entertain any questions or push back. I would ask the group this. When you hear culture, I mean, that's my definition is belief, behavior, experiences. What would you say? What would your definition of culture be?
I'm going to pick on Matt there. He's wearing a good looking BB sweatshirt here, I think, today. Looking sharp. He hasn't asked a question. I know he probably had some. So, Matt, what do you think?
Well, I definitely agree with the definition that I can see on the screen. Um, you do especially the behavior piece. You have to act it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. A lot of times we talk about we walk the talk.
Yeah.
If you're able to walk the talk, you have credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Words are fine, but they're only words.
Mm-hmm.
That behavior, the actions must match it. I talked about our strategic plan and talking about our values, people first, continual growth, opportunities for all. That's fine. And we've got a nice poster and it's framed and all that kind of stuff. And that's on the wall of our boardroom. It's in the wall of our schools. But if we're not taking actions that support that, who cares? And ultimately, all we're doing is minimizing our credibility. And at the end of the day, what we want to establish as leaders is credibility, right? We want to build trust, share clear intentions, right? And being really impeccable with our words and actions and being in alignment and congruent with those. That's what builds trust, which is also ultimately going to drive better results.
And in this day and age with staff retention and recruitment and, putting great people in the classroom and in buildings, it's, culture is such an important piece of that.
It is. It is. I definitely subscribe to that theory. The programs are going to come and go. The initiatives are going to come and go, and those are important. And we need to have strong practices. Absolutely. But it's about the people. It's about developing the people and establishing that culture where we will continue to grow, support one another, etc. Anything else before we wrap up here in the next 7 minutes with the final item that I have to share? Okay, so the forecast for the biggest challenges or opportunities for the future within education. And I talk about this a lot with our staff members. It's hard being in public education right now. We are constantly under attack, fair or unfair, and funding is dismal in most places, which provides lots of challenges for people. And we're in a profession and ultimately a society that is just very critical and wants answers to very complex problems now. So no one will argue or disagree that it's hard, it's challenging, it's hard even when it's good. But my thing is, how do we rise above the fray? It's going to be here. The things we hear in the media, the challenges, the struggle, the lack of funding, all of those things, we can have a laundry list. But what are we doing to rise above that? And remember why we got into this in the first place, to positively impact people, to positively impact and develop students, to deliver better outcomes to people, to have a chance at a better life, right? So constantly bringing back the why, the purpose of our work, and thinking and searching for ways to rise above that fray. And as a leader, when you're in a position of influence, continuing to remind the people that you serve that that's what we need to do. We need to rise above it and be better. All right? Because the challenges aren't going anywhere. Whatever we're dealing with today, we're going to deal with something different tomorrow and the next day and the next year and so forth. How do we continue to rise above it, bring purpose and meaning to the work? And we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. I'll tell you that right now. We need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. I said this earlier, and it's been a theme throughout the presentation and the conversation today is timeless truths. Okay. The challenges, they're going to continue to come. Okay. There will be no shortage of them. But when I think about that is this culture That is a timeless truth, in my opinion. Belief, behavior, experiences. We're going to be talking about culture in 2055. We're going to be talking about culture in 2075. We're going to be talking about culture long after Dan Butler is gone because it drives everything. It drives the behaviors that win. Absolutely 100%. When I think about other timeless truths, what Koussis and Posner are saying here, these are timeless truths. Doing what you're saying you're going to do what you say you will do is always going to be important. Casting a vision is always going to be important. Allowing others to take initiative, experiment, build their capacity, always going to be important. All right? That it does not matter. Those aren't going away. Same thing with this belief about it's about people, not programs, and high expectations for others, but even higher expectations for yourselves. Those are the timeless truths that I'm speaking of. And those are the practices that I seek, because what I do and what you do, we want to have strong staying power. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate the time. We've got a hard stop at 4:50, and my sincere apologies that the presentation went somewhere into the abyss of the cloud, as I had some issues with Zoom and sharing and whatever else. Hopefully this outline gives you some idea and was allowed us to guide the discussion in a way that made some sense, and you were able to take away a few things that I brought to the forefront.
Excited folks are with us tonight. You have a treat here. Adam Busch, who's a good friend and partner of mine, leads AWB podcasts with lots of resources and connections, and a school administrator himself that's really run up the ranks and leading in Johnston, which I'm sure he'll do more of an introduction tonight. But again, these webinars are designed to just offer practical insights, wisdom, and connections with leaders, for aspiring leaders. So thanks everybody being on tonight, and excited. Adam, thanks for taking some time before dinner tonight to join us and offer some practical wisdom.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that introduction. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. If you don't mind, I'd like to start real quick. If I can just get a quick introduction so I know who I'm talking with here, and just kind of tell me where you're at right now, how close you are, like if you're just starting your program, or kind of where you're at within the program, to kind of give me an idea of some of the stuff I'm talking about tonight. I can maybe help try to tailor that a little bit and do a little differentiation, I suppose, as I'm going through this process tonight. So if you don't mind, if anybody wants to start and kick it off, that'd be great.
I can go ahead and start. I don't know why it didn't give me an opportunity to type my name in there, but Matt Reichs, currently a 5 through 8 special ed teacher at Carroll Middle School. Sounds like next year I'm going to be transferred to the high school, teach the same areas. I've been anywhere K-8 as a Strat 1 and as a Strat 2 in Carroll. So I spent a little bit of time with the alternate assessment in that Strat 2 world. And as far as where we're at, or where I'm at in the program, I'm nearing the halfway point right now.
Okay.
So.
All right. And I apologize. I made a noise. I did not catch your name. I do apologize.
Matt Reichs.
Matt.
Yep.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm Julie Schuler.
Hi, Julie.
I am the Dean of Students at Sibley Ocheeden Middle School. This is my first year at that. It's a new position at our middle school. So learning a whole lot that I had no idea about administration.
Hey, guess what? It doesn't stop there. It's just going to keep going on. Yeah. That's great.
I started, I think, the same time Matt did. So we're about halfway.
Awesome. Okay. Well, nice to meet you, Julie. Thank you for joining tonight.
And my name is Allie Slinker. I'm on the same as Matt and Julie, halfway done, sort of at the same time.
Okay.
I'm driving right now, so I don't have my picture on, but
that's perfectly fine.
My current role, I've been in this role for this is my second year. I'm the director of curriculum instruction and assessment at Southeast Valley Schools.
Okay.
Before that, I was middle school title and taught 6th grade at one point before that. So.
Okay. Thanks for joining me tonight. My goal here tonight is to kind of talk a little bit about Just not knowing who is all going to be joining, but just kind of talk about that path to get to that administrative piece, or what it's going to look like from that point forward. Again, I've been around a little bit, but it's kind of give an idea what that agenda is going to look like. So I'll give you a little bit better introduction of me. I know Trent kind of talked a little bit about that, and we're going to get to some survival tips, I'm going to call it, for being an administrator. As I've talked with many of people, just some of the things that have worked and haven't worked, maybe, as you're getting into this business of administration. We're going to talk a little about interviewing. I know if you're not at that point now, or certainly a lot of times within the administrative field, the goal is to kind of keep working towards something, or move up the ranks a little bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about interview insights. I sit in on a ton of interviews, do a lot of interviews. As a big part of my position is hiring. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those traits that it is different. The job, especially depending on where you get into a more competitive field, what you're shooting for, it is a different position to interview for. So the way you interview is also a little bit different. Again, talk a little bit more about some of those traits of effective principals that I've learned from the many years that I've been doing this. And at the very end, we're going to do some Q&A as well. But I'm going to try to break that up as we go. I'll be honest, with just a smaller group, I'm probably not going to watch the chat a lot. So if you have a question, just interrupt me at any point in time. I'm giving you full permission to do that as we go along. So if something comes up, or you want me to follow up with something, just either hit the little raise the hand button. I'll probably see on the screen, but otherwise feel free to interrupt me. I'm giving you full permission to do that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about me. So I've been in this field now. Well, I know I've got I got 8 years to go, I think, till I hit 88. Not that that's, the ultimate goal, but that's kind of where we all are shooting for at some point in time. So I know where I'm at with that. I'm starting to get to those single digits. But I've been doing this now for, where am I at? About 27 years. I think I started coaching at I was actually doing a little bit of coaching in high school, some local type, teams. But when I started in college, I was a UNI graduate. While I was there, I was already starting to coach, and actually started on the college football staff there as well. And so that's kind of how I got into education. I did a ton of coaching, and I really started to understand that I had a passion to see students succeed and just see people succeed in the work that I was doing. And I've just about coached everything. There was a point in time where I was probably the only head football coach, head speech coach in the state of Iowa. I think there's a pretty unique combination. I'm not sure that that's accurate, but I'm pretty confident that at least I was one of very few at that point in time. And when I started teaching, I actually started teaching junior high math and social studies at Queen of Peace Catholic School in Waterloo, which no longer exists. At the time, it was the only East Side Catholic school on the east side of Waterloo. The unique part about that is I'm not Catholic, and I had to prepare mass every 5th week because it was a pretty small school district, and I really didn't know what we were doing. Just it's like, kneel a bunch and do some cross and we'll be okay. But made it through it, got to a point where at least we could, get to some education piece through that too. And, made a whopping $18,000 for that first salary, which, whoo, that's really paying the bills. But that's what it was at that point in time on the east side of Waterloo. And after all of that, after 1 year, I got pink slip because we were downsizing the school district. And it's how I started. I learned the hard way about how this is a business, even though it certainly is more than that with education, but there certainly is a business side. And my family and I moved to Central Iowa. I've lived in Ankeny since, I think we moved here in 2000 is when we've been here for now 25 years. So I first started teaching at Norwalk, taught physical education and health, kind of got into the administration piece at that point in time. I had a principal that had just said to me, you know what, there's a lot of stuff that you do here. I was into curriculum work with that. Like, you should jump into administration. This is something you should try to do. And kind of decided that I should listen to that guy. I really trusted him and really believed in the mentorship that he was providing me, even if it wasn't official, but gave me a reason to jump into this and to go. And by listening to him, got into the program, got going with it. I was teaching and coaching at Bondurant Farrar by that time, a little closer to home for me. And that's when I had finished up my administrative work and jumped into the life as an administrator. The first year of as an administrator, I was an activities director at Sadell High School, which is a kind of unknown little school district snuggled in between Ankeny and Des Moines. It's actually a incorporated area that is a very unique school district. It's very urban school district. A lot of lessons that I learned there about what true poverty is and how to work through some of those situations with kids and understand that life wasn't nearly as sheltered and protected as it was for me growing up in a two-parent household in a little town north of Ames. Certainly was an eye-opener for me as an administrator. And I also learned, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, what it means for duties as assigned, because after 1 year, we couldn't find a football coach. And so it was either we had a program or I was the football coach. So I took that over, and about 3 months into that, our superintendent left and we did some reconsolidation, and I quickly became the AD/associate principal/football coach/ community education director, and started learning what it's like to spin a bunch of plates. But it also taught me a little bit about what I really truly wanted to do. And again, I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. From there, I was an associate principal at Ankeny for about 6 years at a couple different schools. And now for the last 4 years, I've been the director of student services with the Johnston Community Schools. And people always ask me, well, what is the director of student services? That means I basically oversee all of the programming that's not named special education that is unique to our district. So all of our learners that have some sort of a unique characteristic to them, our EL learners, our talented and gifted learners, our homeschool, homebound, homeless. I mean, all of our kids that are kind of on the outside of that typical bubble fall underneath my hat. So it's fun for me. It keeps me very busy. I've got a lot of people that are working within my department to make sure that student needs are met. Anyway, that's enough about me. That's already more than I'd like to do. And if I was doing an interview right now, that's probably more than I should have said in the first place. So we'll get to a little bit of those skills in a second. So survival as an administrator, and some of you are already kind of doing this position already. Julie, you're talking about it. I hate to tell you, the Dean of Students is the code name in education for having you be an administrator and not paying you to be one. That's really what that amounts to, but it's a good starting spot. I've had a lot of good friends of mine that have started in that position. When I was at Ankeny, we called it, the Student and Behavioral Support Specialist or something like that. It was some weird name that we gave it to, again, pay you a teacher's salary and expect a heavy workload. Allie, you were talking about being a curriculum director there. And again, I'm sure that there's a lot of administrative type duties that are assigned with that we just need to get done, because all of us in this role are doing everything we can with very little. And that's part of the life as an administrator. But I will say, one of the things you want to think about as you're getting into this field and getting going in it, and really truly for what the future is going to lie for you, start to think about who you truly are. Now, I think back to when I heard that statement when I was going through this process as well, and that didn't resonate with me at first. Like, that's dumb. I don't need to listen to that. I just want to go be an administrator, go do my thing. But honestly, it took me a long time, many years, to really understand who I was and the type of administrator I was and what I really truly wanted to get out of this career field that I was choosing to go to. We don't get paid enough to really make it worth it. Even right now, I'm pretty high up the food chain, if you want to call that, at Johnston. And there are plenty of teachers that make more per hour than I do when it comes to my contract versus their contract. So you don't jump into this job with all of this responsibility because you're going to make this huge amount of money. But there's a little bit that comes with that. But really, it's going to be, why are you doing what it is you're doing? Do you have a bigger impact? So for me, I really had to define that why. What drives me? And I'm going to ask you to do the same. You need to know what is driving you to do this. And it could be for a status piece. That's great. It could be for a financial piece. That's also great. But at the end of the day, those things are part of the real, solution that you're going to have to come up with, which is what is going to drive you into this field. People are going to define who you are anyway. You know, the people that are working for you, they're going to define it, whether you want them to or not, they're going to. So what do you want that to be? And part of how you present yourself and how you act as an administrator and how you really live your life as a leader is going to determine that perception that other people make of you anyway. And so I would advise you really to spend a little bit of time and think about that, about what are those pieces of you that are going to define you, and really understand what it is that makes you the leader that you're going to be. We also want to talk a little bit about work-life balance. You're going to hear me kind of joke about it a little bit, especially when I was at Sadell and I'm doing all of these hats. That work-life balance piece is hard. And we talk about it a lot in the administrative field. If you go to the SAI conference, which I would highly suggest, there'll be sessions on that. People will talk about maintaining that work-life balance. And it's hard to do that. And frankly, even with my spouse having those conversations early on, as we were just starting to figure out this game of, you know, she would ask me, well, why are you on the phone at 9 o'clock at night? I'm like, well, if I'm not on the phone at 9 o'clock at night, that phone call at 6 a.m. is going to be a whole lot worse. And so just kind of figuring out how to balance some of those things to be able to not burn out so stinking fast in this profession. And it's something that you're going to want to really honestly think about and work through. So as I describe myself, and I'm going to ask you here in a little bit to do the same. As I describe myself, these are the 4 things that I would say are pretty vital to defining what I look like as an administrator. And they're in this order for me. And it took me a little bit to understand that this is really truly where my order is. First and foremost, I am a family person. I am a family man. I like to be home for supper. I like to see my kids go off. I only got one left in the house. We're almost empty nesters, but for a good part of my administrative career, I made it a priority that when I could, I made it home to get supper on the table so we could sit down and we could talk. And I'll be honest, that cost me a promotion at least once in my career, because some of the people that I worked with didn't see that as dedication, because I wasn't the last person out the door. You hear that all the time. What they didn't know was that I just shifted my work. For me, I knew that my kids were going to be up at a certain point in time. I also knew they were going to go to bed at a certain point in time. And emails can wait. They can wait until the end of the evening for me to be able to get those things taken care of. And that's fine. And at the end of the day, I'm better off for the fact that I chose that number 1 piece to be my priority. And I would strongly encourage you to understand that for you as well. If family is your number 1 priority, make it your number 1 priority. And if the people you're working with have a hard time understanding that part, that might tell you that you need to take a look at where you're working and who you're working with. Are those the people you really want to try to grow yourself as a career or within the career with? I would really advise that. Next thing for me is a company man. So I would typically do what is asked of me, and I'm guilty of that right now. I was just having the conversation with my superintendent here, probably 2 weeks ago, because we have lots of needs. I'm like, yeah, I'll take care of that. Yep, I'll do that. I'll do that. And unfortunately, it ends up piling up, and I'm not really thinking about myself from a career standpoint. The drawback is when I do so much, I kind of not great at anything. You know, rather than being really, really good at something and really focusing on something, when we try to spin all of these plates, it can kind of make us mediocre at a lot of things. And that's not necessarily great for the profession. That's not something that I want to try to do for my career. But it sometimes kind of happens that way. And I hate to tell you, as an administrator, that's going to be a truth in the future at some point in time. You've really got to understand where that line is that you can cross or bounce back and forth. Like I can do a little bit of it now, but I've got to get back to my core values of really what it is I'm trying to do and trying to work on. That next step right there is the piece of the professional man. And this part I'm starting to get better at. And that is what is best for my career. For example, I really like the work I'm doing right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the AWB education piece that Trent mentioned there and some of the work that I'm doing with him as well. That's really added a lot of passion to the career side for me. Before I was just doing the job. Now it's starting to feel more like a career. I'm getting to that point now. And I've been an administrator. This is my 16th year as an administrator. And I'm just now really understanding what that professional part of it is and what that career piece is. And maybe it's because I can see the end. I can start seeing where my retirement, and I'm actually opening the IPER statements that come to me and actually read through those and dream a little bit, right? I'm to that point now. So that might be part of it, that I'm thinking more about that. But it really is like, what is best for my career piece for me? And that initially that felt kind of selfish. As the coach, I was the team first, right? My team, we never even had a number one jersey because the team was number one. That was just a goal of ours. Well, it's okay though also to think about myself too, and about what's going to be the next best step for me to make sure that I'm prepared to be satisfied in the work that I'm doing. And then that comes to number 4, which is that reflective piece. Am I proud of what I've done? I've actually started now stopping to take the time to think about that. Like, do I really understand what I've done so far, and what's that legacy piece going to be? If I leave a school district, are they still talking to me, or am I still getting text messages from former colleagues or former students that take the time to stop and say hi, because the impact I made while I was there was enough for them to want to keep that conversation going? You know, what does my sunset look like? Is it going to be, when I get to that point, is it going to be something that I'm going to be I'm going to be proud of? That's something that I really want to try to strive for. So what I'm going to ask you to do real quickly is I want you to reflect on this. And if you want to share, great. If you don't want to share, that's okay. If you're going to look at those 4 pieces, thinking about you right now, if you were going to try to rank those in order, 1 through 4, where would you put that for you? Would you put family first like I have? And there's no judgment here. This is honestly what is going to be your core value, how this works for you. Everybody does it differently. Some of my best friends, they absolutely put profession first, company second, families down the line for them. And that's okay. That's how it works for them. But I want you to think about it real quick. I'll give you about 30 seconds while I take a drink here. And then if somebody would like to share theirs, I'd love to hear it from you. Anybody want to share?
I can share.
Well, I've never,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Julie. You're up. Go ahead.
Okay. I can say, as a, previous teacher for 20 years, family was first. But now this year, even though I still want that to be my number one, it's pretty tough because lots of things happen outside of school time that I have to take care of. And I can't find that balance yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to take you a while to find the balance.
Yeah. And when you get emails at 9 o'clock at night and some kid doesn't want to live anymore, you can't just be like, well, I'm off the clock.
Correct.
You got to take care of it.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Matt or Allie, if you want to, you can. You're certainly not required to.
I would say that I'm more of a probably company man first, so to speak. I kind of like Julie with my teaching. I like to think of my kids or my students somewhat as my family, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The professional side, working towards that more and more each day. And then I also not reflective in the sense of how impactful have I been, but I am reflective, in the sense of, okay, how did that go? Why did things go that way? And how can they improve next time? If that makes sense.
Sure.
So that's where I'm at right now with those.
Okay. Well, thank you. Looks like we might have lost Allie there. That's okay. All right, we'll move on. But thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And I think it's good. Oh, Allie, you're back. Allie, did you want to share? I didn't want to move on before I cut you off there.
Sure. I lost you for a second when I was driving down a hill area.
Yeah, you're okay.
I was just, I've never reflected on it or thought of this in this way, but when I think of those 4 principles there, family is always first to me. I have 3 young children. And I just want them to know they're my reason why I do what I'm doing and why I'm trying to better myself and make a bigger impact is for them. So family's first for me. And then I think of my profession would come next.
Mhm.
And then within that, I almost feel like I'm more reflective on what I'm doing before I make that impact for my company or based on like my district type of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
Reflection is just a huge part of everything in education, every change we make. So I think I have to be reflective on my family and my profession before I can make that impact on the district. It was a nice way to think of it, this way of who I am and what I value the most as I go through things.
No, that's good. I think as you, and that's actually my next slide here, and I'm realizing I'm going to have to move a little bit. I'm starting to get a little windy, so I apologize. But I do think that as you are thinking about this through your preparation, you do want to think about those things because eventually you're going to get to that point, and when you get into the interview portion, you're going to want to be able to speak to that. So I guess the 6 things that are up here is like, do you know what your ultimate professional goal is? Like what do you want to try to achieve? I'll be honest, I have not been able to answer that question for a long time. I had a lot of head principals that worked with me or district office administrators that worked with me, and I would get the, what do you want to be when you grow up question all the time. And I didn't know how to answer it. Initially, part of it was just maybe I thought I was being modest. I'm like, I don't know. And really it ended up in their eyes made me look like I was kind of, I don't know, not non-committed, but maybe just didn't really understand my purpose. I hadn't figured that part out yet. And they're probably right. Hi, Brian. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So again, though, as you're going through those and looking at those 6 questions there, I think you're going to want to try to make sure you start to at least get the idea of what it is you're going to shoot for. And so what is that, where do you want to be at? Do you want to be in a smaller school district? Is your ultimate goal a larger school district? What are those non-negotiables for you that I'm willing to maybe bend a little bit on this, but I'm not going to bend on that one because that's that's what is really within my core belief system or what I value myself as an educator. I'm not going to stray from that. That's not something that I want to do. The other thing is like, how are you going to get there? You're doing that right now. But really kind of think about those pieces. That last one, though, what will keep your fire burning in the wind? That's your why piece. If you don't understand that, because this job gets tough, and Julie, you were just talking about it, it's going to get tougher. Those are some tough. I was getting ready for this weekend. I was thinking, okay, I got my plan for the week and everything. And unfortunately, part of my role at Johnston is I oversee a program that's a partnership with a company that runs a juvenile delinquent facility, a residential facility, and one of the 2 main people that runs that passed away suddenly on Monday. And so I'm scrambling, trying to get, coverage for people and trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And to be honest, it's somebody that I talk to every day, and I'm not sure I've even processed that yet. So I haven't had a chance to. But we've got kids that need support, teachers that need support. That's just part of the job, right? We've got to change what we got going on and do what we got to do when we got to do it. And the reason that we do that is because of that why, that piece that's going to keep our fire burning when the wind blows, because it's going to blow. So the other part I want to talk about is this living the double life is what I call it. Okay. And I go back to when I was at Sadell, and I'm sitting here doing the AD job and I'm doing the associate principal job. And my wife and I always called it date night, which was Friday night at a concession stand deciding, was it hot dogs or was it nachos tonight, right? Because I grab the kids, go home real quick, tell them not to listen in the cars. I'm probably making a phone call to a parent just because it was the only time I had to do it, right? And we're going up to supervise a basketball game. That's just kind of the way it is. And those duties as assigned, the 3 words every administrator just hates to hear, that's part of the job. And that is going to constantly change. And that's the part people don't understand. I mean, spend a lot of times at concerts or at football games or at basketball games. I used to think of those as a task. And then I started realizing that they're actually a great opportunity. That's where I had the chance to actually meet my parents at a little different spot. Not always when I was bringing them in because their kid did something kind of dumb, Also got a chance to talk with kids that way. It's like lunch duty. You know, as an administrator, you're probably the highest paid lunch supervisor at the time in the state, but it's also a good opportunity to really get to know kids at their core, when the guard's down a little bit, if you want to say it that way. So every moment is its chance to lead. And it took me a little bit to understand that part. And I would advise you to really think of it in that frame, that it's not a waste of your time, because yeah, you have other things to do. I can promise you that. You always will. Those won't change, and they're not going to go away because you didn't go to lunch duty one day. But the opportunity to really connect with those kids, that's going to be really important. That's something that you want to try to take advantage of. But I also say pick your roles carefully. This is true. I have been told multiple things. I think maybe that's on my next slide here. Yes. Okay. So you can get kind of typecast in some roles. Okay. So as you see, there's 4 statements right there. All 4 of these were told to me from feedback after an interview for a job that I didn't get. So I interviewed for a job and I was told, you're at too small of a school. They just don't think that I could handle a large school. The same year, I was told, he's suited for a larger school. This is too small of a school for him. He needs to be at a larger school district. While I was the AD/assistant principal or associate principal at Sadell, I was told one interview that I was too much of an AD to be a principal. And then I was also told that I was too much of a principal to be an AD. At the time, I was wanting a leadership position. That's what I was looking for. But it also kind of goes back to that I probably really couldn't completely define my why. I didn't know exactly which job I wanted to have. Was it an AD? Was it a principal? Was it at a large school? Was it at a small school? I hadn't convinced the interview teams what I truly was. And so it gave the door to be open for them to determine it for me. But it is true, you do have to kind of consider those roles. And if you're in one, that's okay. But if you want to move on to something different, you're going to have to understand that the role will follow you. And so being able to speak to the new role or the role that you're trying to shoot for, that may have a little bit of a challenge to it, depending on the role you're coming from. So do think about that. It's not always just jumping at the first role that's there or the first job that I can find. Being a little choosy and choosing the right job is a good choice on your part. And I know it's really, you want to get that first one and get going. But sometimes being a little bit choosy is something that you might want to consider. Okay, real quickly, I want to stop as I've just talked about the why piece, defining your why, and I'm checking my time. Like, we'll be okay. Questions real quick on any of that stuff that I can answer real quick.
Okay, I've got one for you.
Yeah.
For the group. Now you talk about choose wisely.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, but how can a person really do that if they haven't worked in that capacity, such as a principal at a small school versus starting as an associate principal at a larger school, or vice? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely. Here's what I'm going to say to go with that. Okay. And again, I understand it. I jumped at a job right away too, and it was the right job for me. I didn't make a poor choice at all. Okay. There was another time in my career that I took a transfer to another position, and it was all right. I was really comfortable in my previous position. And sometimes you can be too comfortable too, because sometimes it also doesn't push you. But I went from a position where I had a good spot. I had a great, camaraderie with the staff. The building was a good building. Went to another building that was really struggling, and the administrative team was struggling. And it took us a little bit to get our feet set. But the drawback is you also kind of sometimes, for lack of better terms, it's like guilty by association piece. We had an administrative team that was struggling. So when I joined that team, I became an administrator that was struggling. And it took a little bit to get over that mantra within even my own district. And so I'm talking a large district, but within that district, it took a little bit of time to get over that. I was kind of typecast as a struggling principal because we were struggling as a team. And it took us a little bit. The other thing to think about is the situation you are in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about doing your research. That's a big part of that next step. You really, truly want to know, what are you getting into? Do you have support from above you with your administrative chain? Do you have support from your board? What are those pieces that are kind of unknown from just a general search that you're going to want to do your dive into and really dig into to understand the job that you're truly applying for and interviewing for? Does that make sense, Matt? Okay. Okay. Any other questions or anything before we move on? Okay. I'm not sure that was really good wait time. Haven't taught for quite a few years now, so we're going to take that and move forward. All right. So I do want to talk a little bit about interview insights. And again, it's kind of crazy. I honestly thought this number would be a little bit higher. But according to the National Center for Education Statistics last year, so this is the 23-24 school year, 8.8%. So not quite, but getting close to 10% of the head principals, so head building principals of public schools nationwide turned over. 1 out of every 10-ish. Okay, 1 out of every 11. Probably be a little bit better stat there. Now, that's not a ton, but it kind of is. That's still a lot of change. That's a lot of reset. But there's also a lot of opportunities there for those that are entering the profession. The impact that this has on schools when we do have a change, it's pretty drastic. I mean, each departure, there's that ripple effect, right? Students, teachers, the entire community, there's kind of a reset. And there's kind of that moment of trying to figure out the new person, how their leadership style may differ, and do they find a good match, and all of that good stuff that comes along anytime that we have a change. The other part of that you might want to consider here too is a lot of people are leaving that profession, which we know it's a tough job. You're in it. I don't need to teach you that portion of it. But people are kind of giving up on this part because it is tough. And part of that also might be the fact that I think sometimes we jump into things maybe a little bit too soon when we're not really ready, or we don't have the support piece that's going to go along with that to help us be successful. When I took this current job that I'm in, I had not been a district office administrator. I always thought district office administrators were completely disconnected from the world and had no idea what was going on in the building, right? That was the typical mantra, and that's something I try to avoid being that person. It helps that I also lead a building, so I can keep my little connection in the PLC. That's okay. But I didn't really know exactly what that was. And so I had to reach out to some other people to try to figure out what this job truly is that I was taking on and going to embark in. And I had really good mentors. That was a huge piece to that. But that's part of that interview process. I needed to know that before I said yes to that position. So when you're doing that homework, that's part of it. When you're really talking about the position, I'm going to talk about applying and interviewing and making sure that you can go get that position that you want to get. Do that homework. Know what it is you're applying for and know what you're interviewing for. Like what is that position really going to be? You're going to have to get over that no experience piece, and you know that going into it. And unfortunately, that happens a lot. It is. It's part of the realm of the life that you're trying to get into, that we're in here as administrators. It's a pretty small world. We have interviewed, let me do quick math here. We have interviewed 8 different administrators at Johnston, where I'm at right now, in the last probably 3 years, 2 to 3 years. We've interviewed for 8 different administrative positions, and I sit in on every single one of those administrative interviews. I have known at least one of the candidates in all of those interview positions. It's a small world. It truly is. And getting to know people and building that network, it's a big, a big part of that puzzle. So getting the chance to get over that new experience piece, it's going to come from your connections. It's going to come from being able to speak to the job, even though you haven't necessarily done the job. But that's one thing that you're going to want to think about is how do you give those real examples, not just hypotheticals. We want to talk about plans. We want to talk about the examples of the work that you've done currently, even if it's been a stretch a little bit to that, but the work that you have the opportunity to try to engage in and to learn from and tie that into the job piece itself. And you're going to know how to do that through your experience piece. Okay. The other little thing I always put in there too, and this is really because recently I just experienced one of these, the Beamers piece. Think about that as you're preparing for those interviews. If I sit in that interview this entire time like this, there are a lot of people that this will shut them off immediately. Might not even listen to anything I have to say just because I don't look like I want to be part of that job, right? And those little things are really weird. They shouldn't be any, indication of whether you can do the job or not. But again, when we're talking about a lot of people knowing a lot of people and maybe knowing a little bit about the background or heard the background or all the other stuff that goes along with that piece, every little bit does matter. So do think about that as you're doing your research as well. Okay. The other part is to, again, like I said, build that brand or build that connection piece. So here's where I get to do my little plug for the AWB education piece. Okay. At AWB, we have a couple things going on. We do have a daily podcast that goes out every single morning about 5 a.m. And most of those are listening to my voice talking to you about a random topic, trying to give you a tip or something that's going to help you along with your job. And really that started off as a fact that forever people were like, wow, you've got a good voice for radio. And my friends I like to dig say I have a face for radio too, but that's a whole different thing. But we started doing that just to kind of get things going out. And now we've kind of started growing a little bit of a bigger crew of people that are trying to build their brand a little bit and just trying to get out there and share some information with other people. So I would advise thinking about that for you as well. What are ways that you can share your expertise and engage with this wider educational community? Because again, we all kind of know each other. We interviewed somebody a couple weeks back that took a position with us that I'm really excited about. And I had a connection with them and it was all through LinkedIn. I'd never met them in person until they showed up for the interview, but I knew an awful lot about them already. I knew what their vision was. I kind of knew what their ultimate goal was. And it was just from conversing back and forth on I think it was on one of the posts that I'd put up on LinkedIn. And we just started having a conversation and that built into something bigger. So engaging with that wider audience is big. It is a good way to get your name, not only get your name out there, but learn from other people. I said this to my superintendent last week. I've had better PD for myself in the past 6 months of doing my podcast than I probably did in the last 6 years as an administrator. Because as an administrator, I try to find times to do PD. It's, the occasional summer thing here or there. But preparing for a podcast and talking with other people, I've learned so much more in the past 6 months. And I feel like I'm a whole lot better administrator. I'm learning from this tonight right now. I'm talking with you guys. I'm starting to think about some of the things that I probably could do better. I'm preaching it. I might as well practice it too. So all of this stuff gives that opportunity to not only build me and my capacity, but also start to get to know some other people as well. And I would really encourage that. The other thing is that your schools are going to research you regardless. They're going to take a look at what you have on social media. They're going to try to find out about you. Even if you're in there and we don't know you, we're going to try to find out. We're going to find somebody that knows something about you because these roles are so important. We have to get it right. If we get a hire wrong, that can really set us back and that can really be a hindrance for us in the future. So those are super important for school districts. We're going to work hard to make sure that we have the right people. So if we're researching, we see some, dedication to that, the engagement piece, some leadership, even if it's just thought leadership out there within some social media posts or things like that, connection with colleagues, all of that is going to be a big feather in your cap, especially when we're talking about getting over that experience hump. It's going to add that layer of experience without necessarily actually having the experience. So the opportunity I'm saying for AWB, to give you an example, right now we have, I think we have 6 featured contributors. We've got about another 8 or so that are starting to do some more contributing. We offer people the opportunity if they just want to get their name out there and do some publications. So submitting blog entries, submitting some articles, things like that. We don't charge for that. It's just a platform. You submit it, we send it out. For some odd reason, you would make it big and 1 million people all click on your link and Google advertising sends us $100. We'll shave off a little bit for the cost of doing so. And the rest goes to you. Great. Awesome. Not going to get rich off of it. I promise you that. But at least it gives that opportunity to get that out there. But it also helps you build that visibility piece. So we do offer that opportunity. And when we leave here tonight, I'll make sure you see the contact info. If that's something that you want to do, reach out to me. I can walk you through that process. It's super simple. Literally, if you're going to do it a lot, we build you a spot on our webpage and just give you free access and you send your stuff out. It goes on our socials. We share it. Everybody just kind of shares together and it builds from there. Or if you just want to, I've got a topic that's really dear to my heart. I want to write about it. I want to get it out there so people can see it. That is something that we do as well. And so again, when we get to the end tonight, if you have any questions about that or just want to take down some information, send me in a quick email. I'll send you all that stuff back. We make it pretty darn easy. Podcasting is another way you can do that too. But again, it's a free space. If that's something you want to do, just, I'm not saying this is why, but give an idea. One of our contributors, he'd been kind of doing some of this stuff over the last few months and just texted me here that he just landed a head principal job over in West Des Moines. He's super excited about it. And he mentioned in his interview that somebody brought up the fact, yeah, we've seen a couple of your blog entries. And so little bits here or there. I mean, it does add up. It certainly does. But we do have a podcast network. If you're not already following us, help me out a little bit. That'd be great. If you search AWB Education on any of our podcast networks, you will find it. We have about 3 different podcast shows that are on there right now. Your Morning Boost is the one that comes out every morning. It's only like 5 minutes. It's not a real long time. It's literally that intent. Just a quick tip as you walk out the door. And we have a couple other podcasts that are coming up right now too. We have Control Shift Lead that just started. And I think we got one more that's going to pop up this coming month still too. But again, it gives you that opportunity to get in touch with other people. And the biggest part of that is when you get to that point of the hiring process, you're doing all of this stuff ahead of time. So that when you walk into the door, you're ready to go for that interview piece. So a couple of things I would like to share with you, just as some ideas for that interview. When you're getting into there and getting prepared ahead of time and ready to go, you got that interview coming. You're going to show up Friday at 10 o'clock for your interview time slot. Couple things I would tell you that just over the 15 plus years now of hiring different administrators and being part of those processes, these are the things that stand out to interview committees. Like to see it when we have candidates that bring some examples. It's great that you can talk about the stuff you do or you have done, but it's even better if you can explain some of that and show it to us in an example if possible. I would also advise you to make sure you redact any student names out of that, because unfortunately I've seen the opposite of that, where I learned a lot about somebody I should have never known about. FERPA is real, but whatever. But do think about that. But bringing documentation of stuff that you've done is huge. It's really nice, tangible stuff for your interview team to be able to see. The other part, and I've had some people ask me this before about, should I take notes during an interview or does that look bad? Actually, I think that looks really good when you're taking notes about the questions and things that are coming back and forth so that you can use that in your question time at the very end. That's a pretty decent little strategy to make sure that you're staying on task with those things and trying to do all of that good stuff. Okay. I just noticed the time. We're just about out of time. So I'm going to pop through a couple more here as I'm flying through this, and I apologize. But again, know your district, do that research ahead of time. Know what it is you're talking about, not only for you and your fit, but it's also going to guide your questions to be able to make those a little bit more productive as well. Because at the very end, you should ask questions and have those prepared to go. I sure hope your district gives you that opportunity to do so. At the end, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So make sure that your questions are intentional. You can find out that information to talk about your fit. Okay. All right. So quickly here, interview dues. There are 3 parts to every answer. Don't forget this part. You're going to talk about your task, what it is, the responsibility that you had within that task for the question, the action that you took, what it is you did, and what happened afterwards. When we talk a lot of we statements or hypothetical statements, the interview team starts to question whether you did it or somebody else did it and you just tagged along. Your part is going to really talk about the stuff you do. How you can explain what your biggest portion of that was and the impact that it had. Okay. The other part is that planning your questions. Take time. If they give you the questions ahead of time, take a second to read them. Think through your thoughts on what you want to explain in that question so that you have an opportunity to get all of that part out and not be windy like I am tonight. But use your notes for that part of it. And like I said, take those notes and use them. That's perfectly fine to do. People think that shows a little bit of weakness, but honestly, it shows that you're prepared. If you can, reference some current research, authors, things like that, but not a lot of it. You don't want to be buzzword Billy. I don't want to just be full of all of these things out there, but a little bit of it's okay. It shows that you're into the profession, not only just to do the job, but to learn about the job and grow in the job. You've got good authors that you follow, people, whether it's blog articles or whatever that is, you have that, as part of it. The other thing is if they have name tags present, if you can start to use some names, if you're the one that can remember everybody's names, that's great. I wrote all of your names down right here because I knew I wouldn't remember by the end of the day. That's okay if you can do it, but using that to make it a little bit more personal is a key piece too. All right. I flew through that part and I didn't get to my last part, which is perfectly fine. I did want to share a little bit of wisdom to you, but questions for any of that stuff, especially since I just flew through the end of it before we get to the end of this tonight. You're all like, it's supper time. I'm ready to go.
Can you share your presentation with Dr. Grundmeyer?
Absolutely. So you can have the rest of this.
Yeah,
absolutely. We'll do so. As soon as I'm off here, I will get it to him so he can get it to you. The other part I will offer to you, and you're going to have my email here in just a second. Feel free to email me at any point in time. Any questions? Like I said, I love to learn and love to talk with other people. So if it's, hey, Adam, I've got an interview coming up next week. It's at the school district. This is what I'm thinking about. Absolutely. I would love to collaborate with you on that part. I'd love to be able to try to help you through that. Same thing that people have done for me. I haven't learned this stuff on my own. This is just from learning from other people. So yes, absolutely, we'll do that. The last thing I do want to give you before I get you out of here, I do have a few phrases I want you to think about. Number one, the banks require you to make deposits before you can make withdrawals. People do too. That's one that I've always lived by. It's something that was shared with me by another person. Deposits before withdrawals. It's that way with kids. It's also that way with adults. The other part is, or the other line that I really like is the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. Okay. Even though it might be absolutely perfect, timing does matter. So keep that in mind as you're starting to work through some initiatives. You're going to try to start doing something. It has to be the right time for it. Otherwise, it's going to fail. I'm just going to tell you that ahead of time. And the last little one I do want to point out there, and this is you'll figure out as an administrator, kids are really easy. Adults are hard. Dealing with adults is by far the hardest part of this job. It's your own adults within your building with your staff. It's the parents that are out there. It's your own colleagues at times. Kids are easy. Adults are hard. And the biggest part of your learning piece is really talking about how to work with other adults, how to work with different types of learning styles, all the disc profile stuff, all of those things. I know when I was coming through it, I didn't think that was all that terribly important. Like, it's fine. We're all adults. We can just act like adults. Yeah, well, we don't act like adults. So learning how to work through that part is going to be really, really key. Okay. And we got this. I'll leave that one with you too. You got it. I know at times you might not think so. The we part is the biggest part about that. Finding a way to make it a we so that you can work with another colleague or group of colleagues, or even better, even if it's a neighboring district, whatever that is, we got this. That part I can promise you. All right, so let me skip to the very end here. I'm almost there. We had a few more slides. We got close. There is my contact info. We make it pretty easy. Any of our social media accounts, if you search AWB Education, you will find us. And I've got a lot of people that have some varied expertise. So if you're looking for some help with like English language learners, one of the people that works directly for me, she is as gifted of a person as you will ever find in that. So if you're looking for some help with that, you can get to her through this. Got a lot of other people that are working with us as well. So that's my email. That's our website. I would love it if you followed us on socials. Love it if you listen to our podcast and give us some feedback on ways we can make that more meaningful for you. And I love the fact that you took time to jump on here with me and listen to me harp at you for 50 minutes. So I really appreciate that. And I wish you luck. It's not an easy job. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and lie to you. I've never been a good sugarcoater anyway. That was one of those statements I didn't tell you was, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. That's by far the best way to go through it. So it's a good profession. Glad you're doing it. Good luck to you. And thank you for joining me tonight.
Thanks for your time as well.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.